Today we're going to be talking about 1.4 order of operations. I want you to pull out the worksheet that I gave to you today in class, and I want you to go ahead and fill in the first 6 blanks from this slide. So go ahead and pause the slide for just a minute. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to fill in those first 6 blanks. The first one, the P, stands for parentheses. So what I've got here is an acronym, and it's called PEMDAS. And a lot of people have come up with a little saying that says, "Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally." So whenever you're using this to help remind you of what PEMDAS is or the order of operations you need when working out an equation, you can use PEMDAS, okay? So P first starts with parentheses, okay? Now the kind of parentheses work that it's talking about here is doing anything inside of parentheses. So if you could, right next to it, fill it out, go ahead and put this down as an example. As you can see here, there is some kind of work to do inside of these parentheses. 2 plus 3 has not been figured out yet, so you've got to do the work inside of the parentheses first. So 2 plus 3 is 5. So you would do that before you do anything else. This is not talking about if it just had parentheses and a problem and it looked something like 2 times 3. Although there are parentheses right here, there is no work to do inside of the parentheses. So that's not what it's talking about. Whenever it's asking you to do parentheses first, it's saying to go ahead and figure out if there's any work to do inside the parentheses. You could also not just have parentheses, you could have this right here, brackets. And another thing for parentheses is also a fraction bar. So if you've got like a 2 over a 4, you want to do that work within the parentheses and reduce it as low as you possibly can. Next up, you would want to do your exponents, okay? Exponents is what we had talked about yesterday in class. This right here says 3 squared, or 3 to the 2nd power. So you'd want to go ahead and figure out what the answer to that is right after you figured out any parenthesis work that you have done. Next up, after you have evaluated any kind of work inside the parentheses and then you've evaluated what your exponents are, the next thing you're going to do is M or D for please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So you're going to do multiplication and division. This right here, it doesn't matter which one you do first. You're just going to be working from left to right. So you'll do whatever's on the left side first and then work toward the right. The last thing for please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, the A and the S right here, has to do with addition and subtraction. Those are going to be the last 2 things that you're going to work inside of an equation, and you'll always do the work from left to right. Okay, so that's a little bit of the background. Now I want to go ahead and do a few examples with you. So make sure you've got your worksheet out, and we're going to go ahead and work these together. My instructions here for number 1 say to evaluate the expression. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to try to figure out, using that acronym PEMDAS, what I need to do first. So I'm going to write down here at the bottom, you don't have to write this on your notes, but just to kind of help us, PEMDAS, okay? So you remember the P starts with parentheses. As I'm looking at my problem right here, I can see there are no parentheses here. So I am done with the P and I can move on to the E. Next up, E stands for exponents, and I can see there are no exponents inside of my problem. So the next thing I'm going to do is the M. M stands for multiplication. As I'm looking at this, I can see right here I have some multiplication I have to do. So 10 times 5 equals 50. What I'm going to do is go ahead and bring that 50 down, and then I'm also going to bring down my plus, and I'm going to bring down that other 50. So I'm left with 50 plus 50. Now you can look through and see I only have one operation left to do, 50 plus 50, and I can clearly tell my answer is 100. And I'm going to go ahead and box this because I am finished with the problem. So here's the thing with PEMDAS. You have not worked from left to right, because if you went back up here and you worked from left to right, you would see that 50 plus 10 is 60, and 60 times 5 is 300. Clearly that is not the answer that I got right there. So you cannot just work your problems from left to right. You have to work them using the order of operations or using PEMDAS. That acronym is going to help us, okay? So let's go on to the next one. I'm going over here. P for PEMDAS stands for parentheses, and I can see I definitely have work to do within the parentheses. Looking at this first one right here, I can see 3 plus 10 needs to be 3 plus 7 needs to be answered, which is 10. Going on to the next one, I need to also answer what 6 minus 3 is, which is 3. Okay, so now you can see PEMDAS, P stands for parentheses. Yes, I do have parentheses right here. However, there is no work left to be done inside of my parentheses right there. So I know I'm done with P for parentheses. So now let's go on to E. What does E stand for? Exponents. Yes, I can clearly see I have some exponents right here. 3 squared. When I think about what 3 squared is, the answer is 9. Okay, so I'm just going to bring it down in my parentheses, and I'll bring this down in my parentheses. All I have left to do is one thing, 10 times 9, and then you know the answer is 90. Go ahead and box the answer in because we are finished with that one. Okay, so now let's go on. We're going to do a couple more examples. Let's go on to problem C. Down here at the bottom, let's go to problem C. So once again, I'm thinking about PEMDAS. P stands for parentheses, and I can see there's no parentheses work. So the next thing I do is I go to my E in PEMDAS. The E stands for exponents, and I can see right here I do have some exponents that I need to work out. So that 4 squared is 16. Now I'm simply going to bring everything else down. Bring 40 down, bring your minus sign down, bring your divided down, and bring down your 2. Okay, so let's go through PEMDAS. P, there's no parentheses. E, there's no more exponents. M, multiplication, I don't have any, but right alongside of that is division. And you can see right here, I do have some division to do. 16 divided by 2 is 8, and then I bring everything else down. Bring your 40 straight down, bring your minus sign down. Now, as you can see, there's only one operation left. 40 minus 8, you can find out the answer is 32. All right, take a minute, and I want you to try to do problem D on your own. Okay, if you haven't paused the video, go ahead and pause it if you need more time. Let's go ahead and look at this. P for parentheses, there's no parentheses there. E for exponents, there's no exponents there. M for multiplication and division. Remember, multiplication and division are on the same line, so you're going to work from left to right. So here you can see I do have multiplication and I do have division. I'm not going to do this one first because I'm going to do multiplication and division, whatever comes on the left side first. So this is what comes first. 54 divided by 9 equals 6. Bring down your multiplication, your 3, and your divide by 6. Okay, once again, all I have left is, you can see by looking at this, multiplication or division. So you work from left to right. Remember, it doesn't matter which one comes first, whether it's multiplication or division, you do whatever comes first, left to right, okay? So this comes first. 6 times 3 is 18. I bring everything else down. Divide by 6. Only one operation left, 18 divided by 6, your answer is 3. So just remember, when working with PEMDAS, it's very important what order you work your equation or your expression in. Okay, next up is problem E. This one looks a little bit trickier than the other one, so we're going to work through this together. The first one, P for parentheses, stands for parentheses, fraction bar, or brackets. So this gets tricky because you can see I've got both brackets and I have parentheses. So let's just see what we can come up with first. The first thing to me looks like I should just go ahead and get rid of this right here. So we know 3 plus 2 is 5. So I'm going to bring that down. Everything else has to come down, including the brackets. Okay, now I can go ahead and get rid of those parentheses because I did the work inside of them. And now all that's left is times 2. Okay, now a bar that looks like this is basically, a bracket is the same thing as parentheses, but we had to use brackets because it would have been very silly had we had parenthesis right there next to each other. So that's why we did brackets. So now once again, there's still some work to do inside of the parentheses. You can see it's right here, 5 times 2. 5 times 2 is 10, so I'm going to bring that down, and then you go ahead and bring everything else down in your problem. I haven't used my 150, and I haven't used my division sign yet. Now all that's left is 150 divided by 10, and that answer is 15. Once again, please make sure you're following along and you're filling this out on the worksheet that I gave to you. The next thing that I want to talk to you about is this. Number 2, we're going to do both A and B, and this is going to be our final slide for today. Number 2 says to evaluate the expression, when x equals 3 and y equals 6. If you remember in class, we've talked about plug it in, plug it in. So you're plugging in the numbers where there's an x or a y. So when I look right here, 3 times y squared. Instead of putting a y, remember we want to get rid of all the letters and only have numbers. So I'm going to plug in a 6 squared. Minus, now instead of putting this x, I'm going to use this up here because we know x equals 3. So I'm going to put minus 3. Now what you're going to do is you're going to do order of operations exactly like we've been working on already. So remember our acronym PEMDAS. Parentheses. Is there any work to do inside of the parentheses? Now look, there are parentheses there, but there's no work to do inside of it. So no, there are no parentheses. Next one, E, exponents. Do I have any exponents? I do. So these right here are my exponents. I am not squaring 3 times 6 squared. I'm just squaring the 6. So 6 squared is 36. Now you've got to bring everything else down. You don't want to just bring down that 3 because then it looks like 336. So you're going to still keep the parentheses that you had there and bring down your minus 3. So next up, you can think about PEMDAS. P parentheses, there's no work to do inside of those parentheses. E exponents, I don't have any exponents left. M and D, remember for PEMDAS, multiplication and division are both the same, working from left to right. So I'm going to work right here. 3 times 36 is 108, and then I'm going to bring down the minus 3. Once I work that out, because that's my last operation, your correct answer is 105. All right, I want you to pause the video and try to do problem B on your own. Okay, so once again, remember that plug it in, plug it in. Instead of 2 times x, we're going to do 2 times 3 plus y. Instead of a y, I'm going to put plus 6. Hopefully you got this. Divided by 3, okay? So let's go ahead. We're working with a fraction bar here, so we're going to go ahead and just work with what we can on the very top line first, okay? I've got some multiplication there. 2 times 3 is 6. Plus, we're going to bring down the 6 divided by 3. Once again, I've still got some work to do right there on top before I go and divide by 3. 6 plus 6 we know is 12 divided by 3. And then you're finally done. 12 divided by 3 equals 4. Okay? So that is how PEMDAS works. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. We will talk about this tomorrow. But thank you for listening and following along. I'll see you in the morning.